my name is John. You are listening to Packers Blitz podcast, the podcast done by two diehard Packer fans who survived the dark times of the 80s of Packer football and lived to talk about it. This podcast is always dedicated to the greatest fans of all, Packer fans. So we have a treat for you, Packer Blitz people. We have on the podcast, friend of the podcast and friend, Micheal Neelsen. Say, hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good. How are you, John? Thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah, no problem. We'll always love to have you back. Before we get he's going to kind of talk about the whole Rodgers and Favre situation. He has some insight, if you remember, from episode 14, where he made a documentary called Last Day at Lambeau about the Favre divorce from the Packers. And we are right back.
Yeah.
Right, Micheal?
Yep.
We're back to where it started. The other thing, too, he has a new documentary out called Beyond Human Nature, which we'll talk about later. I can tell you it will be playing in April at the Wisconsin Film Festival. So, yay!
Yes, indeed.
Pardon me?
I said yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. And I'll put a link in the show notes. And, so we'll talk about that later. But we got to talk to you about this whole Rodgers thing. Mm-hmm. But before that, I have to ask, Micheal, are you going to do a Rodgers documentary?
Well, so we've joked about that, myself and the other filmmakers who worked on that. And it was called Last Day at Lambeau, as you mentioned. It came out in 2012, so right after, a couple years after all that went down. And that's still available to be seen for free to anyone who wants to see it. It's on Vimeo. I'll supply John with a link to the film so he can share with all of you. But yeah, that's we've joked about doing a Rodgers version, but it isn't yet compelling enough for a movie. What needs to happen in order for that to happen is he needs to leave the Jets after a year and then go play for the Vikings or the Bears or something. That was the moment that we started filming Last Day at Lambeau, was when it was like, okay, this is now a vengeance story. And now it's actually got like a third act that's like happening here. It's not just a usual, star play. It's not Joe Montana finishing his career with the Chiefs. It's now Joe Montana's coming back with the Seahawks, and he's going to try and get revenge on the 49ers. Mm-hmm. So different thing.
That's awesome. Hey, if you do make one, can I be in it?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes.
All right. So we're going to get right to it. So, I talked to on my last episode to my buddy Andy, and we were talking about it, and I said, I really need some other insight from a great Packer fan and a great friend. Talk about this whole Rodgers, what we call as a debacle. What would you call it, Micheal? If it's not a debacle, what would you say this whole thing is kind of shaping up to be?
So debacle's a good word. There's certainly a few curse words I could throw out, but what I'll maybe say is, it's really unfortunate. Like, it's just really sad, like it's just, this is not the way we wanted this to go. It didn't have to end like this. Like, there were a number of ways this could have gone where it didn't have to be like this. So yeah, just overall, it just feels kind of unfortunate.
Now, you watched the Pat McAfee show like I did.
Yep.
So can you kind of give me your, kind of feelings from watching it? And did you ever get confused like I did?
Oh, sure. Well, whenever I got confused, I think, and this is maybe how I would articulate even what it felt like just watching it. Whenever I would get confused, I was less confused and more kind of like exasperated at Rodgers.
Ooh, good word.
Because I would just he's kind of I've used this metaphor before, or this analogy. He's kind of like the arsonist who like burns down a house and then like looks quizzically at the fire department when they arrive, and they're kind of like, "What are you guys doing here? Why are you overreacting?" Like it's a very weird thing he does.
Love it.
Where it's just he'll act like he's like, why is everyone making such a big deal out of this? Like, I haven't talked to anybody, I haven't done whatever. And then like, meanwhile, there's a blazing fire going on behind him. And so he's a perplexing guy to listen to sometimes, but no, more than anything, I just felt when I was listening to it that the Packers really, really miscalculated in signing him to that extension last year. That is in hindsight, as a fan, taking in new information, that is one of the biggest mistakes I think of my lifetime as a Packers fan. That is going to prove to be, if Jordan Love is not like really the answer, I think that's a fireable offense. That your contract they gave Rodgers.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, see, one of the things, here's where I got totally confused.
Yeah.
First of all, he started out by saying, hey, this is not where I make the decision. I'm not making a decision today. And I was like,
yeah,
I took my lunch,
right,
at work to tell him, hey, I'm going to take a little longer lunch because I'm watching and then I thought it was super weird because Pat McAfee, he's starting to learn to be a journalist.
Yeah.
He has a way where he's poking the bear. Right. And then he, before you know it, Aaron Rodgers is going, well, yeah, my intention is to play with the Jets. Right. And you're like, what?
Right.
It was a little confusing.
Yeah, he's trying to be dramatic. He's that's the thing. I wish he would tune down the showmanship. He's too concerned with that at the moment. Yeah.
So would you agree with me that he carefully measures every word he says?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I think.
Yeah, to the point where it's it comes across as very inauthentic at a certain point. You don't know what to take seriously that comes out of his mouth. At a certain point, I didn't need to hear him keep saying how much he loved Green Bay at a certain point. It's like, dude, I got it. I understand. But you're saying it so much now that it feels put on. Like, what is this?
Right. You know what I thought about it too, Michael, was that he kept saying love and really gratitude. If that was a drinking game, I would have been drunk.
Oh yeah. It should be a drinking game going forward with him. Absolutely. Whenever he's going to talk about his enlightenment, his love, his whenever he uses the word conversations, there should be a shot with any of those.
Yeah, and here's the other thing that confused me. And maybe again, this you can offer some I want some clarity from you. So, you remember he said he was 90% convinced he was going to retire.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all.
Really? Why?
Because I don't believe that that's where he's at. Just sixth sense, like watching him, listening to him talk. I still think he will play into his 40s. Honestly, I think he might be playing when he's 42 still.
Yeah, we will get into that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that even more confused me. Okay.
Yep.
So now you just said, nah, I don't buy that.
Yep.
So he goes into the darkness retreat. And remember, too, he said that when he was walking off the field against Detroit, which you were at the game.
Yeah, I know. I was at his last game as a Packer. I can't believe that.
So he had the feeling, he said, and I quote, I believe this is it. I think this is it for me. So follow me on this one, Michael. You go into after the next morning, you get up, you drive into the office and you say, well, guys, what's going on? Are you guys thinking on moving on? Because I'm kind of thinking on doing that too, or possible retiring. Like, okay, that's the moment that you say, well, sure, I think we're going to move forward. We're like 90% sure we're moving forward.
Sure.
That way, Aaron Rodgers could be like, oh, I get it.
Right.
You guys don't want me, right?
Right.
You're making it pretty obvious. But remember, he says he's 90% sure he's going to retire, goes into the darkness, comes out of the darkness, goes to his little shed or whatever they said.
Yep.
looks at his phone, and it's basically like, "See ya, thanks for the memories."
Right.
Do you believe that too?
I
Or do you
don't.
think
No.
okay?
That it's
Why?
too convenient of a narrative. I think that it's so transparently only hearing half the story. I that because even AJ Hawk asked him after that, because that's his whole narrative, right? He's trying to set up this narrative where he
Yeah.
wasn't sure, he was thinking he was going to retire maybe, and but then once he came out, he was ready to go, and like he was thinking the Packers, and then he learned the Packers didn't want him, so he's trying to set up this narrative where the Packers choose to get rid of him before he is ready to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But then AJ Hawk asked him the logical question. So you're saying before you went into the darkness retreat, you would have gone back to the Packers if you came back? Like you weren't thinking about leaving the Packers, you were just considering retiring. But the Packers would have been the team if you came back. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe not, whatever. It's like, okay, well then what is this? What is this whole narrative? Like, what are we talking about? Like you didn't have a eureka moment when you heard what they were saying afterwards. You also weren't thinking you wanted to come back after that, and that's okay.
Right.
Like it's not this is a little different than the Favre thing in some ways, because Favre retired and then decided he wanted to come back out of retirement after the Packers had moved on to Aaron Rodgers as a result of his retirement. This is a little bit different where he's still a Packer today. The day we're recording this, he's on the books, on the team, like he's on the roster. So it's a very weird, surreal place where he's still an asset of the Green Bay Packers, yet he's not really. It's a weird middle ground.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I've told you this before, and we've listened to the show and everything. Everybody knows I love Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think he's done more for this organization than anyone in Packer history. I also think, remember, he said a quote. He goes, "No one has bled more green and gold than me."
Mm-hmm.
And he's right, because he has given to numerous charities. He's given to really a lot of his time they didn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is, one of the things that I always liked about him was that he was arrogant enough to know that, hey, I'm the best.
Right.
So, right. And I know I'm the best. And there's nothing wrong with saying that when you are.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you go through his playoff picture and you look at all the losses, now they're not all his fault.
Sure.
But you're paid to win Super Bowl.
Right. And he typically doesn't show up like the Hall of Famer in those big moments. Like he never,
Correct.
Not never, rarely has like his biggest game under the biggest spotlight. It's usually during the regular season he's killing it, and then they get into the playoffs and he tends to have like a weird game or two. And it's just it's difficult. It's not all on him, I agree, but it's and
the 49ers built their playoff legacy off of Aaron Rodgers,
right?
Which, by the way, that was his favorite team growing up. So it's just weird. I don't know.
Yeah. But I'll say, as it stands at the moment, I am more frustrated at the Packers organization than I am at Rodgers, even though I am ready to move on from Rodgers. For whatever chaos Rodgers created in this, by the way he behaves and the way he, talks outside of the meetings, kind of gives the passive aggressive digs at the organization and stuff. For all the mess that he creates, I sort of bake that into the equation already. Like, we've known who this guy is for many, many years now. So I'm confused by how the Packers organization has found itself back in this spot again after going through it once with Brett. How are we back here now? Like, like the only common denominator between these two things is Mark Murphy and the Packers organization. Like, what the hell? And they just seem so inept. It's almost like I'm honestly still wrapping my head around it, to be honest.
Yeah. So you've seen the movie Office Space.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So I'm going to play a line from you. Every time people say Mark Murphy, this is what I think about. Okay, so I'm going to play this right now for you.
I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Remember the old guy in there? I have people skills.
That
Don't you guys get
portrayed by Wisconsin actor Richard Reilly, actually.
it?
Pretty great.
God comes back, my
Yeah.
friend. That's what I always think of Mark Murphy. Because remember, you know how he fired Mike McCarthy?
Yeah, oh, it's
you remember
terrible.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah.
The rumor is that he went down in the locker room, basically said, "Hey, get up to my office. Get your big butt up to my office. I'm putting in big butt."
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, "But there's 3 games left."
Right.
We're what?
Yeah. They have an astounding lack of people skills and just honest to God, just sensibilities. They're so corporate at this point. They give such a corporate vibe,
Right.
there's just endless stories of them kind of leaving former players and coaches with bad taste in their mouth, and I don't like that. And as the NFL's smallest market team, you can't have that reputation. You have to have the opposite reputation. That yes, we're the smallest market, and yes, you got to come to the frozen tundra where it's cold and all that stuff, and it's not a big, New York City type place where everything's going to be there for entertainment. Yeah, you're going to come up here for football and football only, and we treat you better than all the other teams. That's what you need to have with the team like this. You can't be in Siberia, so to speak, and kind of be like, not great people. That's awful.
Yeah. And so let's elaborate on that a little bit. But before we throw Mark Murphy under the bus, we both agree that he's done so much for this organization to make it look professional.
Oh yeah,
right?
In the role of
Title
president and
Town,
CEO, absolutely.
Title Town, the new facilities, like you and myself, we've been going to Packer games for a while. And if you remember, like maybe, I don't know, 5, 10, whatever, a number of years ago, you go to Lambeau and you're like, wow, okay.
Right.
Could need some work.
Yep.
And then what did they do? They put up the Title Town with, where you can take your kids, the Packers Hall of Fame, the businesses and the hotels. Yeah, Mark Murphy did that, people. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we are on the list to host the NFL draft.
Right.
Do you think we would be on that list if not for Mark Murphy?
Yeah. I mean,
right?
He certainly didn't screw it up, and he's a very good business person. I still think all that stuff starts with having a winning franchise. If we were the Cleveland Browns during the last 15 years or 17 years, I wonder if even Mark Murphy could have done a whole lot with that. But it's he's absolutely quality at the business side as the president and CEO. He does more than enough. I'd rather they not put him in front of a microphone very often because he doesn't seem to be able to do that very well. But other than that, he seems to do a very good job. The frustration comes in for me now that he's put himself in the role of football operations head, essentially above the head coach and the GM and Ed Policy, the cap guy, or not. I'm sorry, that's not Ed Policy. Russ Ball. The fact that he's got all 3 of those guys at equal levels reporting to him.
Yeah,
I think it created this. I think the whole mistake with the re-signing Rodgers to the 3 years with $160 million guaranteed last offseason was created by that. Obviously I don't know this. There's no evidence to this outside of just putting pieces together. But at this early date, March 17th, my guess about what happened was Gutekunst was ready to move on for years, was ready to cut Rodgers basically every offseason, and really saw the opportunity last offseason with Rodgers coming off of 2 back-to-back MVPs and the fact that Denver had hired Nathaniel Hackett as their head coach, We can get rid of him right now for a king's ransom. We could be the first team in NFL history to trade a defending MVP for a king's ransom, more than what the Seahawks got for Russell Wilson. And my guess is Mark Murphy stopped him. That's my guess.
Why?
Because Mark Murphy's thinking about the business, the brand, the legacy of being a team that trades a two-time or four-time NFL MVP. He's thinking about, we're not stupid. That was his quote, right? We're not trading Aaron Rodgers. We're not stupid.
We're not stupid.
Right?
We think we're stupid.
Exactly. Yeah. He's thinking about all that stuff. Whereas Gutekunst, I'm not saying Gutekunst is wise here, but Gutekunst knew that this relationship was over already. It was done, and anything that we were going to do to prolong it was not real. Like it was. And now that we've heard from Rodgers, his recounting of last season sure sounds like that's true. Like it was basically a wasted year. Like they were hating each other the whole year. He didn't feel like he was wanted from like week 3 on. So like, what was the point of the extension? Like there was no point of this. And now that you've done that, in the span of one season, you have gone from having a king's ransom for this guy to a situation where you're going to be lucky to maybe get a 2nd-round pick.
Ooh.
Like it's going to be bad.
Oh, really?
It's going to be bad.
Really?
And if that's the case, I honestly that is fireable offense. That is bad business. And so that is, but who would you fire if it's Mark Murphy who made that call?
You
would need.
And remember, remember he's tied to, he tied himself to Rodgers' contract.
Right.
So he has 2 more years and he's retiring.
Right. And you would basically need a mutiny on the part of the board to get rid of him right now.
Yeah.
And so like, you're not going to get, if that's the case, if no one gets fired, that's my suspected reason is that Gutekunst would have traded him last offseason and Murphy stopped him. That's my guess.
Man, I love it. Bringing it, Michael. I love it. Here's the thing. When I think it went south, with Rodgers and the organization, is not with the Jordan Love thing. I really don't think that's not it. Because I know Rodgers said, well, why didn't you tell me? You could have just told me. I would have been okay with it. Hey, buddy, we don't have to tell you.
Right.
Okay, so where it went south is, and this is brilliant Rodgers. This is why I love him. Remember when he had that press conference that was like an hour?
Oh, yeah.
And he came up and he said, we need to treat players better. And they need to ask me for personnel moves. And he basically gave the finger to the Packers organization without actually doing it.
That was the scorched earth press conference. It was 2 off seasons ago.
That was scorched earth. So at that time, you go, okay, this ain't working. Goodbye.
Right.
And people would have been like, I don't know, but then, hey, I think it was
then he won another MVP, and then they signed him to a 3-year extension that led to last year. Like it's just like I'm happy to have the 2 MVPs, but that last offseason,
but you went to Super Bowl.
Right? Sure, but that last offseason. Man, because and for the record, no one on this show will know, but I'll be totally honest. Like last offseason, I was in favor of the extension. I was in favor of signing him for 3 more years so that he would finish his career out in Green Bay and go keep staying all in. Like just I don't care if we have to rebuild completely at the end of this, whatever. But as fans, we're always operating with the least amount of information, right? So like. Now with more information and the benefit of hindsight and like hearing how this last season went, it's just a total nonsense. Like I don't understand. I think I even talked about this on the last time I was on the show. My biggest frustration of the last couple of years was that we were kind of half in, half out on the all in thing. Right. And so it's like, why are we doing this half in, half out mode? Like either you're all in or you're building for the future. They don't do both. No. And in retrospect now, that contract extension was more of that, more of doing both. And I just don't get it. I think I can, if we only get a 2nd-round pick out of Rodgers now, honest to God, that is I will never be able to hear Brian Gutekunst or Mark Murphy ever again say that their primary motivation is protecting the Packers or doing what's best for the Packers.
No.
Like, because if that was the case, you would have traded him a year earlier.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get. This is some my man here knows because he basically lived it in his documentary. So, can you give me, without getting into like, we probably could get into like whatever.
For
Give
sure.
me the 2 main or 3 main differences between Favre, divorce, what a debacle, whatever you want to call it, and Rodgers. What do you think are the differences?
Well, the number one, I think I already mentioned, which is that Favre retired, and he retired, and that changed that sends the whole thing on a different direction from the beginning, because then the Packers had the ability to do kind of like the closure moment of the press conference, and then they were able to publicly move the conversation onto building into the future. And it wasn't until Favre got the itch to come back late in the offseason that we started all this. So the real nightmare of the summer of Favre didn't really start until, July.
Yeah.
So it was later. That's a difference. Another would be the fact that because it was later, the face of the organization in dealing with it fell to the head coach, Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy was the one taking questions all the time whenever he would appear for mini camps and eventually training camp when Favre showed up. And that was pretty nightmarish for him. And eventually he ended up having to almost have the final, fatherly say of like, we're not letting him back in because I got to protect this locker room kind of decision. Everyone blamed Ted at the time. And yes, Ted signed the papers to trade him. Yeah. But publicly, man, it was all Mike McCarthy that whole summer. Then probably the other big difference would be the difference there's way more similarities than there are differences. I mean, like okay. I was gonna say the difference between the two quarterbacks themselves, in the sense that they are different people and they handle things a little bit differently. But at this point in their career, they are very similar. There's a couple of really just uncanny parallels.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah, one is that it was almost, I want to say, 11 years to the day. I might be doing the math wrong, or 11 years to the week from when Rodgers came in to relieve Favre against the Cowboys in 2007. To show that, correct. Yeah. When he was the backup and came in to relieve Favre from his injury to kind of like, finish out the game and show his chops. It was almost 11 years, I want to say, to the week when Jordan Love had that against Philly this past year.
Wow.
Or not 11, sorry, longer than that. Like 16 or 17, whatever it was.
Yeah,
but it was like that week of the season. Then you have this whole thing that Rodgers just did with Pat McAfee. That was Greta Van Susteren. That was when Favre went on Greta Van Susteren on Fox News.
Yeah, you sent me that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was.
Yep.
And then when he kind of like didn't go as scorched earth as he did in that press conference, but kind of laid out his timeline, so to speak.
Yeah.
In a venue like Greta Van Susteren was to Favre, where he was not going to get challenged, where it was going to be kind of scripted questions and whatever. And that's what Pat McAfee was. There was there's a few other ones out there I'd have to refresh myself on now, but there's some almost eerie parallels among all this stuff. But.
Yes, but here's my biggest difference between Favre and Rodgers. Okay, like you said, and like we both said, Rodgers is a smart guy. He's very careful with his words. Why Favre is like, he's that good old boy where he's going to have a beer with you and we're going to hunt gators or deer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, okay, I can relate to that guy. That's a guy I can relate to, right?
Yep.
However, do you recall when Favre came back on family night or Rodgers first?
Oh, yeah.
Not really coming out, but he was taking over the team. Do you remember that at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you remember Favre came back like like he was some conqueror.
Yep. He was a
Sitting up
returning
in
hero.
the
Yeah.
suites. Everybody's
Yeah.
back. Come on, Rodgers is
Yeah.
not doing that, and that's
No, well,
where I see the difference.
I could see Rodgers doing that, but you actually reminded me in that's probably where my third difference is
Okay.
The way that the two quarterbacks are viewed. I know you're saying how much you love Rodgers, and I love Rodgers as a player as well. But you are not going to see bringrodgersback.com this
No,
often.
no, you're not.
It's not the same connection that the
Nope.
fans have
Nope.
between these two quarterbacks.
No, you're absolutely right. So, in America, we love to blame people.
That's right.
So, Michael, who do we blame here? Give me a percentage. Give me like 70% this, 30% that, whatever you want to do, to equal 100%.
Well, what I'll say is, before I give that, I'll say, in spirit, I think there is so much blame all the way around here. I wouldn't lay it at anyone's individual feet, but the buck to me always has to stop with the adults in the room, and that's supposed to be the organization.
Yeah.
So it drives me so nuts that they knew the guy they were dealing with. They knew who Rodgers was.
Preach on.
And they, and we more than we do, more than fans do. Like they know what he's really like in person and in private.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of us fans could have handled this better with Rodgers than they did. And so I'm not saying that Rodgers hasn't been a complete, jackweed in a lot of this.
Yeah.
He has, but if you know that's who you're dealing with for a number of years, you can manage yourself into a better solution than you did. Right. So I would say 60-40 Packers organization blame.
Nice. I went 70-30. So we're both on the same page. So anything else you want to add before we say some nice things about Rodgers?
No, I mean, I've got lots of nice things to say about Rodgers. I am ready to be done dealing with just him. I don't know. I feel bad for him. He's got, and I don't mean that in a condescending way. I mean that sincerely. I was talking about that with a friend of mine today, that he clearly is searching for something, and I don't know if he's finding it. He insists on his own enlightenedness so much that it makes me worry that he's really not in a great place. So I'm a little bit worried for him, but he's going to do great in New York. I think he'll have a great.
We'll get to that. We're going to differ on that.
Okay.
Okay. So give me one of your favorite moments. Actually, can you give me 3? Is that too much to ask?
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
So just start with number 1, number 2, number 3. Favorite moments can be anything.
I feel like I should go in reverse order because they kind of build up.
Oh, there you go. I love it.
Yeah. So I'll say that my number 3 favorite moment with Rodgers would be the 2016 divisional playoff at the Dallas Cowboys.
Good one.
Yes. So that was obviously he owned everybody in that stadium every season and winning the Super Bowl down there. That game is, for those who don't remember the specifics, was the incredible throw to Jared Cook on the sideline. That was let me see, I think I've got the stats right here.
Oh, do you?
It's a 35-yard pass down the left sideline to tight end Jared Cook, who somehow kept both feet in bounds. So that got Mason Crosby within range for a 51-yard field goal to win the game. So it wasn't even a chip shot after that.
No, it wasn't a chip shot.
But they got in range, and that game was unbelievable. And they shouldn't have been winning. That was against the number 1 seed that year. The Cowboys knocked them out. That's always fun to do in another team stadium.
How about them Cowboys?
Yes. And my Texas friends are going to hate me for this too, because my number 2 is the 2014 divisional playoffs against the Dallas Cowboys. This was the Des Bryant no catch.
No catch one.
Lambeau Field.
Yep.
Loved that one. A great game to rewatch. The lighting in the game that day in Green Bay was beautiful, and just that team should have won the Super Bowl. Because obviously we'll all remember the next week was the debacle in Seattle.
Oh my God! Don't bring
but
that
game, that team was ready to go to a Super Bowl.
Yes.
And then my number one, really the greatest moment in my view in Aaron Rodgers' career is 4th and 8 in Chicago. The year he came back from his broken collarbone to Randall Cobb. I remember where I was. I was in my apartment in Milwaukee with my girlfriend at the time, who now is my wife. And we were drinking Bourbon County stouts. I remember everything. It was a very, very vivid memory. And I lost it, and it was great. And yeah, those are probably my top 3.
So I'm looking at your page here. You got an honorable mention. Give me an honorable mention one.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Let's see. What's the first one here?
You got the one with the Giants.
Yes. Oh well, yeah, that one's great. That was great because it was a hell of a game that no one remembers. In 2011, the 15-1 season.
Yes.
It was in New York, and the Giants took them all the way to like the final minutes. So it was just an offensive heavy game. Clay Matthews has a pick 6 in that game off of Eli Manning, which is really fun. Donald Driver has a touchdown with barely keeping his toes in bounds in the end zone. And that's another one where Aaron Rodgers, he had 53 seconds left late in the game, and had to drive the length of the field to get in field goal range for Mason Crosby to kick the winning field goal. So similar to I want to say it was 2021. It was 2020. Yeah, 2021. The second of the most recent MVP seasons, when we went to San Francisco and Rodgers and Devontae hit twice and then spiked it, and then they kicked the field goal to win in that one in week 3. And Rodgers gave his pump after spiking the ball, even though it was still a 53-yard field goal that Mason had to hit. He did a similar thing in New York that day, that they had to go the length of the field and made a similar kind of pump fist when he spiked the ball, knowing that they were going to win. So that's a great game.
Yes. So my 3-2-1 really quickly, the Miracle in Motown, 2015. I was an idiot because we were losing that game. I know it was 10 seconds left. I shut off the TV and I'm like, lose to the Lions.
Yeah.
And I go in my office and I'm just pacing around and I'm like, oh well, I'll just look at the final score.
Yeah.
And I run back out and flip on the TV, and that's the one where you almost hit the roof.
Right.
Oh, love it.
Unbelievable.
Second one was with the Bear game. So we're right on that. And my first one was the 3rd and 10 play in the Super Bowl against Pittsburgh, where he threw to Greg Jennings.
Yep.
Where he just threw that laser and over the outstretched fingers of that one defender from the Steelers.
Yep.
And that,
incredible.
My honorable mention is the Atlanta game in the second half, where it was just you could literally would have blitzed them with 12 people.
Yep.
14 people, 18 people, wouldn't matter. He was just so on fire and in his zone. It didn't matter.
That was the Aaron Rodgers that you wish we would have seen once more in the playoffs at some point. But he never really got back to that in the playoffs again. Because that was unbelievable. That was otherworldly.
Killing me, Mike.
Yeah, I know. But that pass in the Super Bowl, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
And again, let's reiterate, this is all his fault.
Yeah.
Last time, our special teams, we can't even block people.
No,
it's
absolutely.
The thing you do.
Absolutely. You would like to think that he could, it's not all his fault, but it's sort of like in these games, it's a very hard argument to refute that. What was the final score in that game? I want to say it was 14-10. I think the yeah. So gosh, with a supposedly transcendent Hall of Fame quarterback, you would like to think he can get more than one touchdown in that game.
And Devontae Adams in his prime. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the reason why, even though, yes, he gets more blame than he deserves as the quarterback, in addition to getting more credit than he deserves sometimes, he gets more blame than he deserves because of what he is, right? It's like it's the same with Tom Brady. Like somehow Tom Brady always delivered in those moments. Yeah.
You know how much I hate Tom Brady.
Oh, I know. I hear you. He's an anomaly. He's an anomaly, but it's like that's what you expect, right? Is that you know when if it's 13 to 10 or whatever,
absolutely,
and you've got Aaron Rodgers, you should be able to win that game.
Yeah,
you should be able to win that game.
So he's going to the Jets.
Yeah.
Give me your crystal ball, as we were doing last night. What kind of season is he going to have, personally? Okay?
I would have. Oh, like on a personal level or as a player?
As a player, excuse me, as a player. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah,
no, as a player, I think he's. I have no reason to bet against him, and he does seem to be his best when he's got a grudge. So I would have no reason to think he's not capable of a fifth MVP.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, where do you think the Jets end up?
I'm guessing, everything's been following Favre to a T so far. AFC title game, losing in the AFC title game.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to hold you to it. And everyone listening, we're going to hold Michael to this. Before the start of the season, I'm going to have you back on.
Yeah.
And we're going to go through the Jets schedule, and we're going to go through the Packers schedule, and we're going to do win-loss. Okay?
All right. Yep.
And then we're going to see what happens, and we will come back, and I'm holding this to you again, Michael.
Yeah.
Now, you Packer Blitz fans, we're holding Michael to this. He's going to come on from time to time when he's not making great films and everything like that. And we're going to talk about the games, and we're going to talk about where we are and see what our records are. So
that's good.
I agree that he's going to have an MVP season. My buddy Andy said, absolutely not. There's no way he can catch up. And by the time he does, and it gets to mid-season, it's too late. So that's his, and he makes a lot of sense because you got to be all in, right? You got to be like at the mini camps, you got to be at the OTAs, you got to be at the pizza parties.
You
right?
Ideally would be, yeah. You ideally would be,
right?
Yeah.
You just have to be.
You would. I mean, yeah. The only wrinkle I'll throw into that is that he is going into the system with Nathaniel Hackett that he won his last two MVPs with.
Okay. So here's the other thing, devil advocate, as my friend Andy is. What did Nathaniel Hackett do last year with the Broncos?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious that people have been hiring him to try and get Rodgers. Like, and when they didn't get Rodgers, they brought Russell Wilson as a second option. And that didn't work at all. So now the Jets hired him again as their offensive coordinator, and they got Rodgers. Yeah. So it's I honestly, if the Packers organization was better at business and better at looking out for the organization and giving us 3 first-round picks, he'd be a Denver Bronco last year, and who knows what would have happened. You're right, my friend. You are right on. So I agree with you. He's going to have a great season. I think personally he gets to the divisional round. Okay. Just because for him to get the AFC Championship, and he just might, I'm not going to bet against him. A lot of dominoes have to fall. Like Burrow has to get hurt. Mahomes has to get hurt. Herbert. Well, I don't know if they got to get hurt. Well, here's what I'll throw in. Because you're right. You're right that the AFC is a gauntlet in a way that the NFC isn't. But just remember that the Jets have a killer defense. So he hasn't had a killer defense really since maybe 2014, and since earlier from then 2010. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah. So. And you said earlier you think he's going to play 2 more years. Is that correct? I'm right now. I would bet that he'll play at least 2 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I totally agree. I think if he gets to the AFC Championship game, there'll be enough people in his ear to say, "Hey, man, we are right there."
Yeah.
Now, do I think he goes back? I don't know. Depends upon a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Free agency, draft, who's losing who. I mean, Kansas City, if you've been paying attention to any of the free agency news, they've been losing some key people.
Yeah.
And Dolphins have been adding key people. The Patriots have 50 some million under the cap. They will add key people.
Yep.
So it's like, you know,
Both of whom are in Rodgers' new division.
correct. I mean, Jalen Ramsey is going to the Dolphins.
Right.
He knows Rodgers. He's played against them, and he's still a pretty good corner. So, all right, it is time to role play, Michael.
All right.
I am Jordan Love, okay? And I'm calling you on the phone because, Michael, you're a good fan and you got a good head on your shoulders, and I want some advice from you. So, hi, Michael. I'm Jordan Love. What are you going to say to me?
I would say to basically swear off any sports media through the entire season right now. Don't listen to anything. Don't listen to ESPN radio. Don't watch ESPN. Don't anything like that. Just focus on your game. You've got 2 years with us here. You're not on a hot seat. We're not going to bench you for anything this year.
Yeah.
You are free to make mistakes and screw up and get better. We are, it's kind of the whole Mike Holmgren to Brett Favre thing. Like, we're joined at the hip. We're either going up together or going down together. So, because it really is the case. If Jordan Love isn't it, heads are going to roll. So, we're giving you a bunch of leash here. Don't think about anything other than your game. You have freedom to screw up early on here. You're with us for 2 seasons. We'll make this work. Just grow, just get better every day. That's all we need to do.
Michael, that's some great advice. This is what I'm telling Jordan Love. I said the same thing. Be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't think about Aaron Rodgers. Don't think about Brett Favre and saying, I am, oh my God, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks? That's not fair.
Right.
No, dude, just play your game. Go out there and play. If that means it's 3rd and 10 and you're going to run, okay. That's what you want to do. Go run. Don't think about Aaron Rodgers, 3rd and 10. He'd roll out of the pocket and throw a laser to whoever down the field, and there's our first down. Like, don't think about that. Just be yourself. Okay, so let's wind it up here. Michael, can I bring you back? Because I want to give you enough time to do this. Why the Packers didn't become a dynasty. I want to give you more time because I think this is an episode on itself.
It certainly could be.
Yeah, because I think there's more things, but just a couple minutes to this before we get to before you can talk about your documentary and tell everybody where it's going to be, all that stuff. Can you give me maybe a 1-sentence answer for right now that I can maybe use like a trailer or something for when I have you back on and ask you the question again? Why do you think the Packers never became a dynasty?
Complacency.
Oh, one word. I like that.
Yep.
Complacency. All right. I'm going to file that because I want you to elaborate on it on one of our next episodes, because I think we're going to bring this topic back because we had a lot of people give me a lot of different reasons why. So I want you to, hey man, you got a great new documentary coming out, Beyond Human Nature.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's also set in Green Bay, but not about the Packers. If the Packers didn't exist in Green Bay would be known primarily as a paper mill town. So this is a story of a paper mill worker in 1992 who went to work one day, disappeared, And after an exhaustive search, he was found at the bottom of a pulp vat with a jump rope tied around his neck attached to a 50-pound weight. After a 2-year-long investigation, 6 of his coworkers were tried and convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. One of them is still in prison to this day. He is up for another parole hearing this year. One of them has passed. And the others have all been released on various levels of parole at this point. One of them completely released on a writ of habeas corpus. So we made a documentary telling this story from all sides because there's been a lot of advocacy work done on the behalf of these 6 guys saying they didn't kill Tom. Tom was the paper mill worker. And so there's half the story that's advocating that these guys are innocent and actually killed himself, that it was a suicide. And then there's the other side of the story, which is law enforcement, the lead investigator and the prosecuting attorney, the district attorney, who we have both in the film as well, arguing that the state got it right and that no new evidence has emerged in the years since. So there's no reason to think that it's anything different than what the state decided. So
after doing this, I know when you're a filmmaker, you get heavily involved in the film and it's really hard to be neutral, but is there anything you took away from this documentary after you did it? Is there anything that changed your mind or made you go like, I never really thought about it that way?
Well, I had that kind of every day of the interviews. We would talk as a crew, myself and the director of photography and the sound guy and everything. After our interviews would conclude every day and be like, "Well, what did you think? And what did you think when you heard that?" And our opinions swung every day based on what we heard. We never really got comfortable with a belief, so to speak. We went in with a curiosity as our primary orientation and wanting to tell the story of the human beings involved and understanding why has this case captured the consciousness of Green Bay and the larger Brown County community for going on 30 years. This is the 30th anniversary. Why has it been that way? Like, why this case and not all the other cases? And how does something like this happen? How does a case that becomes so notorious unfold? And so we wanted to tell that story. And so no, I don't have a really firm opinion on what happened to Tom. But what I will say is that my hope is that the film itself functions as how we think stories like this happen, how we think this case became so notorious. Why is it that this is such a haunting case? Yeah,
I watch a ton of documentaries, my friend, and I'm definitely going to watch this one. But the question is, where can I watch it?
Absolutely. Yeah, so for now, and I'll be able to update further on subsequent episodes, but for now we have our festival screenings scheduled, most of them. So we are having our world premiere in Green Bay, which is very appropriate, on April 14th. That's a Friday, at the Tarleton Theater. You can get tickets to that via the Green Bay Film Festival's website. They may be scheduling a second screening because the first one is getting close to selling out, but they haven't decided that just yet. But they'll at least have that one. And then the very next day on Saturday, April 15th at 4 p.m. in the midday, we're going to screen as part of the Wisconsin Film Festival in Madison. And that one is going to be at the Marquee Theater at Union South in downtown Madison, kind of the campus area. And so we'll screen it there. And then we will also be screening it at the Milwaukee Film Festival, which just announced yesterday, but they haven't given us a date or time yet. So you have to stay tuned to our social media channels on that. After that, though, for all the listeners, this will be on domestic video on demand. I just can't announce where and when yet.
Okay. Well, we would do that when we have you back on.
Yes. But everyone will be able to see it. Just stay tuned.
I am excited. Just the trailer alone, I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, thank you.
I heard about it, to be honest with you, but I'm like, when this comes out, people, you'll hear more about it. Trust me, because it's
Yeah.
an amazing story. It really pulls at several different emotions. In my feeling from just seeing the trailer, I was like, wow, this is crazy. So, and I'm super excited, and I'm super thankful again for you being on my podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And I wish you all the best with this. And my main thing is we love our Packer fans. Now we just have to wait to see what the Jets get. According to Michael, we're probably only going to get a second rounder, which if that happens,
it's bad,
I'm
man.
not going to be happy. Let's put it that way.
It's bad.
So,
it's bad.
So, Michael, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that's great. I always enjoy coming on. Talking Packers is easy, so it's not work at all.
Yes, and we use this as our venting, so it's not guys sitting in your house talking to your wife and her to roll her eyes at you.
Right.
All right, buddy. Well, I love you. Good luck on all the premieres and everything. Keep me up to date so I can tell our fans and everything. And then I look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, absolutely. Likewise, John. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Have a great night.
You too.
This is John from Packers Blitz, and I have a great deal for you. We've been using Podbean for months now, and we love it. So you can get a free month of hosting for your podcast. But wait, there's more. We can also throw in $100 of free advertising where you can advertise on Packer Blitz or many other podcasts on Podbean. So like I said, we love it here, Packers Blitz. So all you have to do is go to PackersBlitzPodbean.com. That's PackersBlitzPodbean.com. Click on the special links and you all set and get you up and running. And like I said, Packer Blitz loves it and you'll love it too.